This was one of those projects where there were various ideas. It wasn't a sort of completely galvanized, finite concept. It was a variety of ideas, and as it usually goes, you want to have a situation by which you can work with client, with the client body, with a variety of people to elaborate and to actually start defining, you know, a very reasonable concept of what can work.
We always wanted something solid, you know, something with a mass to it, but I don't think we initially knew what that would be. When we developed it, then we were looking at material that could sit easily in the water. That was one of the big considerations. We wanted it to be monolithic. You know, we were very keen that it should be single material as far as possible that went everywhere. So, you know, it concentrates your mind on the form rather than, you know, any detail to it.
Mm-hmm. The thing is about sculpture, the response seems to be a sculptural one. Is that fair?
I think it's fair to say when you look at the result, but if you look at the different stages from the beginning, it wasn't always this. You know, at some stage, some of the volumes were much more rectangular, much more precise, much more, you know, in a sort of more classical way, if you wish, an organization. So it's again one of these things that sort of throughout the process developed towards that, and then, you know, how the volumes sort of ran into each other, how the roof follows that, how the concept, which is probably much more important, of the gallery spaces being on the top floor, single floor, each of the galleries responds to one of these volumes inside as much as you see outside. I think the monolithic aspect is quite important, the single volume in a way, the singularity. It's the same on the roof as it is on the walls. It's also a conscientious decision that all the other walls and partitions and elements outside, although also in concrete, are a different concrete. It's not the same. The object sits in itself on a tray, so to speak, making this kind of sculptural element sitting in this, you know, rather bizarre situation.
Well, it's an industrial estate, and as far as we're aware, it's been one for about 1,200 years.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it wouldn't have made sense for it to be in glistening white marble with all these industrial buildings around. It just sits in its context.
It's a very particular urban situation. As you can see, the surroundings are very disparate. It's made up of lots of very different elements, whilst at the same time considerations, as we liked or as we tend to have, about how you can bring daylight in a gallery, how you can exhibit art, how you can make the promenade or the experience for the visitor goer or the punters, you know, an enjoyable exercise. I think it's fair to say it ran in parallel with the concept of the outside and the whole, you know, organization of the building. I think the kind of dissociation between window, as in an aperture where you can see out, different from the sort of the roof lights, where it's just about bringing in natural daylight, which in this case is at the end of the volumes, so the washing down being bounced off and softly coming down, counterbalanced with the light that comes in through the windows. I think there's a sort of very good balance in my mind between, you know, the usage of this dark grey, almost black coloured MDF, the panelling inside. Also, they're very simple plasterboard walls, which suit well for an exhibition space, which most of the halls will change and adapt.
It's the level of flexibility that's joyful, really. And I think, you know, the first year has obviously been a massive learning curve for us to realise what you can do with the spaces, and for artists to learn what they can do with the spaces. But I think the level of flexibility is just going to be one of the pleasures as we develop the programme here. As you feel there's always a different character coming through depending on curatorially what you've done. And I think with the amount of natural light that comes into the spaces, and a completely different inflection you get on a day like today, as opposed to, well, apparently the sun does shine occasionally. You get a gloriously different atmosphere.
I like it. It's light and it's airy. I don't like the lights because I'm anti-light, you know, electric light.
But the galleries have got quite a lot of daylight in, haven't they?
Yeah, yes. We're seeing it on the possibly the worst possible day.
It's a very grey day.
No, but that shouldn't make any difference. You know, the weather outside, in fact, it should sort of enhance the building, shouldn't it?
Was it Ruskin that said there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just weather? My big bugbear of the new galleries I've seen over the last decade or so is they do feel like hermetically sealed boxes. There's barely any natural light coming in. I do think that natural light coming in is just a crucial part of having an aesthetic experience.
It's important in the oeuvre in the sense that it does mark a different step. You know, throughout the evolution, the office now being around for about 27 years, you see every so often something that comes along that's kind of new breath, different approach and so on. And in that respect, I could defend this building as being quite a keystone project.